Hey everyone, we are in part 2 about blood. And part number 1, we learned about the blood functions and the components of blood. If you still remember, on part 1, we talked about there are two main parts of the blood. The top one is called the plasma or blood plasma. Mostly consists of water, some proteins like albumin, globulin, and fibrinogens, also electrolytes, hormones, vitamins. All of them will be in the blood plasma. And blood plasma is 55% of blood component. The second part is called the form element. Okay, so the form element is actually blood cell, which consists of red blood cell, white blood cell, and the platelets. So for part 2 today, we will learn about the form element first. Okay, after that, we're going to learn about the blood plasma. The form element is 45% of the blood components. Okay, so again, the form elements is actually the cell, okay, cellular components of the blood. And the forms elements or the cellular components of the blood consist of 3 main types of cell. The first one, of course, is the red blood cell. The scientific name is Erythrocyte. And this red blood cell is more than 95% of the cellular components. This is the reason why you see the blood color is red, because mostly consists of the color of this erythrocyte or red blood cell. And this red blood cell main function is to transport oxygen. Just remember, oxygen is the most important molecules in our body. We need this oxygen in every cell in order to perform their function. Now, the second type of cellular components or the form elements in the blood is called the thrombocyte or platelets. Okay, thrombocyte is about maybe 4% as a blood cellular component. And the main functions of this thrombocyte or platelet is for protections against loss of blood. Like, for example, during bleeding, these platelets will help us to coagulate or to clot the blood, okay, to stop bleeding. And the last one, the last cellular components in the blood is called the leukocyte. Okay, leukocyte or white blood cell, and it is only less than 1% in our blood. Okay, so less than 1% of our cellular components in the blood is actually white blood cell. And the main functions of this white blood cell is for protection against infectious disease or infections. White blood cell itself, or leukocyte, consists of 5 different types. The first one, the most abundant one, is called the neutrophils. It's about 54 to 70%, as our white blood cell. And the main function is to fight against bacteria. Okay, if you take a samples and then, for example, you find that neutrophil may be increased into 80%. Okay, when you calculate the percentage of this neutrophil, let's say, increase up to 80%, it is indication that the blood sample that you have is coming from someone that have bacterial infection. Because what? Because neutrophils' main function is to fight against bacteria. If you see in the blood sample, it is increased above the normal value, then it is indication that people that have that blood sample has bacterial infection. So it can be used for diagnose infection or disease. The second type of leukocyte or white blood cell is called the lymphocyte. So this is the second abundant type of white blood cell. It's called the lymphocyte. And this lymphocyte actually has two types, which is B cell and T cell. The normal value is around 25 to 33% in our blood. And the main function is to fight against viruses, also kill or remove tumor or cancer cell, also remove some foreign molecules. If, for example, you take a sample of blood and you have this lymphocyte increase, let's say up to 50% in the blood, it is an indication that the blood sample is coming from someone that has viral infection. Okay, it can be used for diagnosing disease. The next one, the next abundant one is called the monocyte. And this one is actually can change into cell, is called the macrophages. The main function of this monocyte is to fight against bacteria, remove dead cells, and also debris. So the function is kind of cleaning our blood against this bacteria, dead cell, or debris. The normal value is around 3 to 9% in our blood. Again, if you take a sample and you calculate this monocyte increase up to, let's say, 20%, okay, it is an indication that that person has bacterial infection or maybe long-term infectious disease. Okay, so someone that have long-term infectious disease, their monocytes usually increase above the normal value. The next one is called the Eosinophils. It is about 1 to 3% only in our blood. And the main function of Eosinophils is to fight against parasites like worms, protozoa like malaria, and also for fighting allergy or allergens. If, for example, you take a blood sample, and you calculate the eosinophil is actually increased maybe up to 10%, for example, it is an indication that this person has parasite or parasitic infection, or maybe they have allergy. And the last one, the least abundant one, is called the basophils. It is less than 1% in our blood. And the main function is also to fight against allergy reaction. It is also the one that causing the inflammations in our body. If we have, for example, infections or maybe damage in our tissue. Now, if you take a samples and then you calculate that the number of basophils, let's say, increase to 5%, okay, it is an indication that that person maybe have allergic reactions on their body. So again, calculating this white blood cell over here, difference concentration or percentage of this white blood cell can indicate what type of disease that person have. So again, this is the type of white blood cell based on the abundancy. The most abundant one is neutrophil, lymphocyte, monocyte, eosinophil, and also the last one is basophil. So the easy one to remember the order is just remembering this mnemonic. Eh? N, we can use just the first letter N, L, M, E, and then B. Eh? So I usually use this to remember. So N, we can say never let monkey eat banana. So never let monkey eat banana. So by remembering that order, then we can relate to the name of the abundance white blood cell in our body. So never neutrophil, let lymphocyte, monkey, monocyte, eat eosinophil, banana, basophil. Okay, now where that blood cell is coming from. Okay, remember all blood cells are made in our organ is called the red bone marrow. And this red bone marrow is located in our bones, so in the bone tissue. So the bone tissue, especially part is called the red bone marrow, is the place to produce all type of blood cells, red blood cell, white blood cell, and also platelets. All of them are produced in the red bone marrow. Now in the red bone marrow, we have the stem cell. It's called the pluripotent stem cell or hemocytoblast. So this one stem cell can produce these different type of blood cell over here. This is the reason why it's called the pluripotent. Pluripotent means a stem cell that can make several type of other cell. Okay, so from these pluripotent stem cells located in the red bone marrow, then it can be divided into two types of stem cell: myeloid stem cell and lymphoid stem cell. The lymphoid stem cell is the one that will produce the lymphocyte, which is the T cell and the B cell. So this produce only two types of cell, the B cell and the T cell. This is from this stem cell, lymphoid. The myeloid stem cell is produce the other type of white blood cell. So red blood cell, the platelets, the other four type of white blood cell, basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil, and the monocyte. Just remember, only the lymphocyte produced by this stem cell, lymphoid. The other type of white blood cells are produced by this myeloid stem cell. Now we start with the first type of blood components or the form element, which is the red blood cell. Again, this is the most abundant cells in our blood, accounting about 95 to 99%. So there are a lot of red blood cell in our blood. If you see under the microscope, it looks like this. Look like a disc. It's called a biconcave disc, which is thinner in the middle. So the middle is thinner. The outside is thicker. So thinner in the middle, thicker in the outside part. So this is the red blood cell if you see under the microscope. It's also known as erythrocyte. So this is the scientific name, erythrocyte. Consists of 1/3 of hemoglobin. So mostly the inside part of this red blood cell consists of protein. It's called the hemoglobin or HB. So a lot of hemoglobin. Now, what's the function of hemoglobin? This is actually the one that binds the oxygen, the one that carry the oxygen. And just remember, the red blood cell do not have nucleus. Okay, so red blood cell does not have nucleus. It means that their life is actually short term only. So each red blood cell maybe only live for about 120 days. Okay, about 120 days only, 100 to 120 days. So it means that the red blood cell has to be made all the time. Okay, every 120 days, one red blood cell will be broken down and the other one will be produced. Okay, so they do not have nucleus. They carry oxygen by this protein. It's called the hemoglobin or HB. Okay. Oxyhemoglobins, it means that hemoglobin that carry oxygen. Usually this is located on the blood vessel that go to our tissue. Okay, tissue. Okay, so this oxyhemoglobin is the red blood cell that carry this oxyhemoglobins will be the one that go to the tissue, because tissue need oxygen, right? The other one from the tissue, then the red blood cell will be carried back into our heart and then finally go to the lungs. So this is heart, and then there will be lungs. There will be lungs over here. So this one is actually called the rich blood. Okay, so rich blood, because what? Because it's carry a lot of oxygen, and oxygen will be used by the tissue. It will return back to the heart and then to the lung. So this blood vessel over here will carry what we call the poor, okay, poor blood. This means that the blood that do not have oxygen, because oxygen has been used by this tissue. It will be returned to the lungs, and the lungs will give more oxygen to this blood, and then finally go to the heart, go back again to the tissue. Okay, so there are two types of red blood cell. The one that carry oxygen is called the oxyhemoglobin, and the one that do not carry oxygen, which is coming from the tissue, is called the deoxyhemoglobin. So no oxygen, poor blood. As I mentioned before, the red blood cell lack nucleus. There is no nucleus in the red blood cell, and also no mitochondria. This means that this red blood cell will die. So they have life spans about 120 days. Cannot divide, so it cannot produce other blood cells. So it cannot repair. It has to be made. They can produce ATP through the glycolysis only, because there is no mitochondria. So the oxygen and the glycolysis, the ATP production is only through the glycolysis, which is going to be very little energy in the red blood cell. So red blood cell actually needs a lot of support, which is production and also the ATP for this action. Okay, so this is red blood cell. The productions, we already mentioned about the productions of blood cell. All of them are produced in red bone marrow. Special production of red blood cell is called the erythropoiesis. It is red blood cell formation. Again, happenings in the red bone marrow. The control, this is from negative feedback system. So when our tissue, let's say, sense that our oxygen level is down, okay, then the kidney, okay, will produce hormone. It's called the EPO, erythropoietin. Okay? So erythropoietins will go to the red bone marrow. It will stimulate production of red blood cell in the red bone marrow. So this is what we call the negative feedback system or negative feedback mechanism. And with a few days of EPO secretion, many new red blood cells will be appear in the blood. Okay? When we have enough red blood cell, then the EPO production will be stopped. Okay? So this is negative feedback system. Okay? And this is just the stages for red blood cell production, starting from the hemocytoblast, which is the pluripotent stem cell, into the erythroblast. This is the one that will become the red blood cell. And then finally produce the erythrocyte that will be released into the bloodstream. Again, as I mentioned before, because red blood cells do not have nucleus, they live for only 120 days. So each red blood cell has to be produced continuously because they will be broken down after 120 days. Okay. There are some nutrients required for red blood cell production. First one is vitamin B12. This is really important. Vitamins we need for red blood cell production. Folic acid, which is a type of amino acid. This is required for synthesis the red blood cell. So DNA synthesis for the red blood cell. So vitamin B12, usually we can find them or we can get it from like vegetables, meat, okay, folic acids, like liver has a lot of folic acid. Iron also needed for making the hemoglobin. So because iron is part of hemoglobin, so iron is really important element for making these hemoglobins. So you can find irons maybe from food like dark green leaf vegetables, including spinach, for example. It has a lot of irons in it. So it is needed for making hemoglobin, which is part of the red blood cell. If we don't have enough red blood cell, so we can have a disease called the anemia. Anemia is the condition where the oxygen carrying capacity of the red blood cell is reduced. Okay, maybe because of reductions of hemoglobins due to the iron deficiency, for example, or maybe because of the reduction of red blood cell production due to maybe deficiency of vitamin B12, folic acid, for example. Okay, so this is the productions and control of red blood cell. This is in the diagrams. Remember, this is made from a negative feedback system. So when our system sends low blood oxygens, okay, like for example, our tissue have difficulty to get the oxygen, then we sense this one. And this will give the information to liver and the kidney. Okay. So in the kidney, okay, kidney will produce hormone, is called the erythropoietin. Okay, and then erythropoietin will go to the bloodstream and finally reach the red bone marrow, which is part of bone tissue. And this is the place for making blood cell, including the red blood cell. And because EPO or erythropoietin reach the red bone marrow, it will stimulate the production of red blood cell. And then the red blood cell that is produced from this red bone marrow, okay, will go to the bloodstream. If the production is enough, it actually will give inhibitions to the kidney. So the kidney will stop producing the erythropoietin because we have enough oxygen, we have enough red blood cells in our circulation. So this is what we call the negative feedback system. Okay, so negative feedback system, which is the response increase of red blood cell production is because of the stimulus sends the decrease of red blood cell in our system. So when the stimulus decrease, the response increase. And this is again what we call the negative feedback system. As I mentioned before, there are several substances that is needed for red blood cell production. The first one is vitamin B12. This is required for DNA production in the red blood cell. And these vitamins B12 is absorbed from the food that we eat in the small intestine, and the function is for DNA synthesis. Iron also absorbed from the small intestine, is actually coming from our diet mostly, and this is the one that used for hemoglobin synthesis. Folic acid, this is type of amino acid, also absorbed from the small intestine, and this is also used for DNA synthesis. Okay, so in our diet, we need these resources in order to produce the red blood cell. If we have deficiency of these substances in our food, then what happens? We have what we call the anemia. Okay, so really important when you eat, make sure you have enough of these substances needed for making red blood cell. Now, the red blood cell count is usually used for diagnosing whether our blood is healthy or not. Okay, so red blood cell count, which is the number of red blood cell in cubic millimeter or microliter of blood. And this is the normal or healthy range for red blood cell counting. So you take sample, you can count it using special counter. For male, the red blood cell counting should be around 4.7 million to 6.1 million. So this is normal concentration for male adult. Okay, for female adult, the concentration of red blood cell, the normal is a little bit lower than male, which is around 4.2 million to 5.4 million. So this is for female, the normal value. For children, and the normal value is about 4.5 million to 5.1 million red blood cell per microliter. So this is normal value for children. If, you know, in the samples they have lower than this value, then this is an indication of, again, it's called anemia. Okay. So red blood cell count are useful in diagnosis disease and evaluation of their progress. Changes in red blood cell count reflects the change of blood oxygen carrying capacity. Again, deficiency means anemia. Lower blood red blood cell count. There is another way to diagnose the healthy condition by using red blood cell, using a value is called the hematocrit. So this hematocrit actually measure the lower part of this blood component, okay, which is the foam element. And remember, foam element mostly consists of red blood cell. So when we compare this component, okay, so the lower component and the total component over here, we will get the value is called the hematocrit. Okay, so hematocrit is actually percentage of red blood cell compared to the total component of blood. So hematocrit for females, normal value has to be between 38 to 46. Remember, the average over here is 45. Okay, so 45% is actually average normal value for human. For female, about 38 to 46, average 42. So female, normally, if it is healthy, they have about 42% of this red blood cell. It's called the hematocrit. So this is hematocrit value, 42% for female. For males, the range for normal value between 40 to 54. So it's higher for male, right? Average about 46. Okay, so healthy male will have hematocrit. It's called HT. Okay, so HT value for male is average 46. This is a healthy normal hematocrit value for male. If a male or female have lower than this lower number, let's say female only have 35% of hematocrit, the male only maybe have 38% of hematocrit, then this is an indication of anemia. So this individual have anemia, not enough red blood cell or not enough hemoglobins that carry the oxygen. And then if, for example, this female has the hematocrit value up to 50%, okay, or male over here maybe up to 60% hematocrit, okay, so this is indication that that person has condition is called the polycythemia. Polycythemia means it has too much red blood cell in the blood, and usually the blood become stickier. It's causing dehydrations and maybe this too much red blood cell can cause the blood become stickier, and it's going to be more difficult to circulate. There are some athletes maybe using the blood doping. They actually injecting the blood to their system. It might or it can cause this polycythemia. Also dehydrations, because we have less water in our body, it might also cause this polycythemia. Tissue hypoxia can also cause this polycythemia. Okay, so there are two conditions. Abnormal condition, if it is too low, it's called the anemia. If it is too high, it's called the polycythemia. Okay, so anemia means too low red blood cell. Polycythemia is mean too high red blood cell concentrations in our blood. Another way to measure the oxygen capability in our blood is by measuring the hemoglobin concentrations. Remember, red blood cell, 1/3 of red blood cell is actually filled with the hemoglobin. So we can calculate the concentrations of hemoglobin in this red blood cell. The normal range, so there is a special equipment to measure this hemoglobin. The normal range for female is 12 to 15.5. Okay, so that's the normal value for female, healthy female. Okay, for male, between 13.5 to 17.5 hemoglobin. This is normal range for male. So if they have it this range, they are healthy, okay, considering the hemoglobin value. If they have less than this value, less than 12 for female, for example, less than 13.5 for male, then they have indication of anemia. It's not enough hemoglobin. to carry oxygen. Okay, so now this is this table showing you type of anemia. Okay, so anemia basically mean you don't have enough red blood cells or hemoglobin or hematocrits. Okay. Decrease red blood cells in number, okay, maybe due to hemorrhage. Hemorrhage mean bleeding, maybe like accidents can causing us to be bleeding. It's of course it will decrease the number of red blood cells, and at the end it will of course causing this anemia. Okay, so hemorrhagic anemia, accident. Hemorrhagic anemia can be caused by for example, viral infections. Viral infection actually can cause this hemorrhagic anemia, loss of blood from our body. So bacterial infection can also causing this hemolytic anemia. Deficiency of some factor, like for example, inadequate number of vitamin B12 absorption. Okay, this is pernicious type of anemia. Destruction of bone marrow, maybe by radiation. Someone have maybe cancer, they have radiation. It might cause the bone marrow to be destroyed, and it can cause this aplastic anemia. Decrease hemoglobin concentration. Remember, hemoglobins made from iron, so we need iron for making this hemoglobin. So it can cause what we call the iron deficiency anemia. This is dietary malnourishment. Heavy menstruation can also causing anemia, which is because of this deficiency. Abnormal hemoglobins, maybe there is some gene, defective gene that causing the hemoglobins to be abnormals in shape and function. Example is someone that have sickle cell anemia. So they have this deficiency of oxygen carrying capacity due to their genetic disorder. So this is actually genetic condition, sickle cell anemia. Another ones that causing by the genes abnormality is called the thalassemia. So thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, this is due to the abnormality of gene that produce or control the hemoglobin production. I just want to show you how it look like under the microscope. This is iron deficiency anemia. So the red blood cell is abnormal, it's bigger, but you know they have less capacity of carrying the hemoglobin. This is a sickle cell anemia. If you see this red blood cell, it's not normal in shape. It looks like a crescent moon. So the red blood cell is abnormal shape, and because of this, it also causing this red blood cell to carry less oxygen. So this person will have anemia. It's called the sickle cell anemia. Another problem with this sickle cell red blood cell over here that look like a crescent moon is sometimes it can clog the circulation. So someone that have sickle cell anemia, they don't only have problem with oxygen capacity, but also sometimes they have problem with the blood clogging the blood vessels. Okay, treatment for sickle cell disease. So remember, this is caused by genes abnormality. So this genetic disorder. There is a mutations in the DNA which code for this abnormal structure of red blood cell. So red blood cells are stickier, so it can clog the blood circulations. Because the red blood cell has different or abnormal shape, it causing this red blood cell to carry less oxygen, so oxygen deficiency. It can also cause blockage of circulation, severe pains. Red blood cells also die quickly. They usually normally 120 days. For someone that have sickle cell anemia, maybe the red blood cell lifespan less than 100 days. Okay, it can resulting in the anemia, which is causing the extreme fatigue. So someone that have sickle cell anemia, they usually really feels exhausted, easy to feel exhausted. Sometimes they also have pain due to abnormality of red blood cells. Treatment usually using some antibiotics to protect the infection of the spleen. Transplantations of bone marrow can be also used for this sickle cell anemia treatment, or maybe umbilical cord stem cell to cure the disease, and some experimentation to correct the mutations in the gene. Okay, so this is a genetic disorder. Mostly the one that have sickle cell anemia are African Americans, because they actually African American, they actually carry this gene from their place where they live. So usually sickle cell gene develop in area that have a lot of malaria infection. It's called the Malarian belt area in Africa. Okay, so mostly the one that have sickle cell anemia are African American in this state, United States. Okay, so we mentioned that red blood cell only live for 120 days because they do not have nucleus, and also they do not have mitochondria. So they always be destroyed and then reproduce. So how the destruction of red blood cell and where this destruction of red blood cell happening? Remember, the production of red blood cells are in red bone marrow, which is in the bone, right? Destruction of red blood cell is actually happening in liver. So liver is the place for destroying the old red blood cell. Okay, so after months of bending, squeezing through the capillary, red blood cell will lose the elasticity and become fragile. So this old red blood cell will be carried into liver. In the liver, then the red blood cell will be destroyed by some process like phagocytosis, macrophages. The hemoglobin will be separated from the red blood cell. It will be separated into 4 subunits. Okay, which is the globin. 4 globin. Globin is a type of proteins. Okay? So there are 4 globin chains that will be produced for this from this destruction of hemoglobin. And the heme is actually part of the hemoglobin that carry the irons. So irons will be here in the heme part. Okay, so again, the heme then will be broken down into iron and biliverdin. Okay, so iron and biliverdin is actually productions of heme destruction in liver. Okay, the irons can be used again, can be reused. It will be transported into the red marrow to produce the heme over there. Okay, so the red blood part of the red blood cell. While the biliverdin, this is the one that will be removed from our body. it will be converted into bilirubin. Okay, bilirubin is the conversion of biliverdin, and this bilirubin usually has kind of yellowish color. Okay, brown yellow color, this bilirubin. And these bilirubins will be excreted into bile pigment. Okay, and this bile will be excreted through our feces, to our digestive system. So that's the reason why the feces has color. Mostly that color is coming from this bilirubin color. And also some of them will be removed through the urine, excreted through the urine. It is the reason also why we have color, yellowish color in the urine, because of this bilirubin part that also go through the urines, excreted through the urines. Okay, so this is how the red blood cell, the old red blood cell, will be destroyed. Mostly happenings in liver. They will be destroyed into several parts. Okay, the globin part, the heme will be break down into iron and biliverdin. The iron will be reused back for making heme in the red bone marrow. The biliverdins will be converted into bilirubin, and this is the one that will be removed from our body through feces and urine. Okay, this is similar things, which is stages of this red blood cell destructions. Okay, so old red blood cell then will be delivered to the liver. And then in the liver, spleen and liver, it will be broken down into several parts. The hemoglobins consist of heme and globin. So globin will be reused. The heme will be destroyed into irons, or broken down into iron and biliverdin. Irons will be reused for making heme. It will be delivered back into red bone marrow. The biliverdins will be converted into bilirubin, and this part of biliverdin and bilirubin will be secreted into bile, which will be removed through the feces. Some of them will be removed through the urine. The globin part also broken down into amino acids and will be metabolized by the macrophages and releases into plasma. Some of them will be reused for making red blood cells, will be delivered into the red bone marrow. Okay, this is another diagrams of life cycles of a red blood cells. Let's say start from number 1 over here. Okay, so nutrients needed for making red blood cell will be absorbed from the intestine. So this is including vitamin B12, iron, folic acids. It will be taken from our diet in small intestine. Then it will be carried as a nutrient into our blood, will be absorbed by the blood. It will be carried into the red bone marrow, and this is become the resources for making red blood cell. Okay. So then red blood cell will be made, will be delivered into circulations. Okay. And then the old red blood cell will be broken down. It has to be carried into the liver first. It will be broken down over here into the globin parts, the heme parts. The hemes will be broken down into iron and biliverdin. The biliverdin then will be converted into bilirubin, and these bilirubins will go as a bile component that will go to our GI tract, and then it will be removed through anus as a feces. So this feces carry bilirubin. So that's the reason one again, it has color, yellowish brown color because of this bilirubin. Some of them also will be carried to the kidney, and then finally will be excreted to the urine. And it is also the reason why our urine have color. It is mostly because of the bilirubin part, which is coming from the destruction of old red blood cell. Okay, and the irons can be using back for making the heme in red bone marrow, and also some of them can be used for other organs like muscle. This is showing us the structure of hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is actually consists of 4. Okay, there are 4 chains of amino acid. Okay, so globin amino acid. There are 4 of them, and each of these 4 globin chains connected by iron molecules. So you see these iron molecules over here. So there are 4 iron molecules in each hemoglobin. So the iron is actually the one that binds the oxygen. So the heme molecule that consists of this iron is the one that binds the oxygen. So from this, you can see that each hemoglobin, okay, can bind or carry 4 oxygen. Okay, so each hemoglobin can carry 4 oxygen, and we have million of hemoglobin in each red blood cell. So it means that there are million of oxygen carried by red blood cell. So this is showing us the structure of hemoglobins. It consists of 4 globin protein, and also it shows us that there are 4 iron that connect each globin molecule. Iron, or the heme, is the one that carry oxygen. Therefore, each hemoglobin can carry 4 oxygen. Okay, I think we're done with the red blood cell. Now we go to the next form element or cellular component, which is the white blood cell. Okay, so white blood cell or leukocyte, the main function is protects against disease, infectious disease. These leukocytes also have limited lifespan, but it is actually longer than red blood cell. So they have also be replaced or made in the red bone marrow. It's the same place for making red blood cell. Okay, it's made in red bone marrow under the control of hormones. Okay, there are hormones called the colony stimulating factor, is the main hormones that control white blood cell production. And we know there are 5 types of white blood cell. Okay, based on the abundancy, remember, never let monkey eat banana. Neutrophil. So if we start from the most abundant one is neutrophil, then lymphocyte, monocyte, eosinophil, and basophil. That's based on abundancy. But if it is based on the shape, it can be divided into 2 types. The first one is called the granulocyte. Granulocyte means it has granule. It has look like a sand-like structure inside the cell. That's granule. Okay. There are 3 of granulocyte: neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. So all of them end with phils. Phil, it means that it has granule. Neutrophil, it is neutral. It means that the granule is smaller. It's a really small granule and neutral in color. Eosinophil, it has red, okay, red granule. Eosin is actually mean red, okay, so red granules. And then baso mean blue, so basophil will carry the blue granules. So as you see over here, it's carry blue granules and causing the cell is look like all blue in color. You don't really see the nucleus because the nucleus color under the microscope is also blue. So it's covered by this blue granule for the basophil. The second type is called the agranulocyte. So A means no. So no granules. Is clear. You don't see the granules in this white blood cell. It consists of lymphocyte and monocyte. So there is no granule. If you see monocyte, this is actually the bigger type of white blood cell. And the lymphocyte is actually the smallest type of lymphocyte based on size. Okay, so this is the division of white blood cell based on granule structure, whether there is granules or no. Okay, we start with the first one, neutrophil. Remember, based on the percentage, this one around 54 to 70% in our blood. So this is the most abundant one, right? The granulocyte with small light purple granules, kind of neutral. And this is very important. We should be able to see this nucleus over here. The nucleus is actually consists of several lobes, maybe 2 to 5 lobes. So only one nucleus, but this nucleus divided into many lobes. Okay, so it's really, really special shape of this nucleus for this neutrophil. So we should be able to see them and then tell, okay, this is neutrophil based on this shape of the nucleus. Okay. The second one for this one is eosinophils, and as mentioned before, is red granule. Okay. And then you can also see the nucleus. The nucleus look like an earphone. So there are 2 lobes connected with the smaller channel over here. So it looks like an earphone. This is eosinophil. So you can differentiate between neutrophil, eosinophils under the microscope easily. The next one is basophil. It has blue granule. And because it has blue granule, you cannot really see the nucleus because the nucleus also blue in color. Okay, it's only 1%. So this is the least abundant type of leukocyte in our blood. The next one is monocytes. This is the largest white blood cells in size, really, really big. And also you can see special shape of the nucleus. It looks like a kidney. So kidney-shaped nucleus. So you can see them easily. And you can tell, oh, this is monocyte. Okay? It's about 3 to 9% in our blood. And the last one is called the lymphocyte. And as I mentioned before, this is the smallest one. The smallest one in size. It's almost similar size with the red blood cell. So these are the red blood cell over here. Okay? It's a little bit bigger than red blood cell. And the nucleus, if you see, is really, really big. Almost fill all the contents of the cell. So mostly, okay, the content of cell is actually nucleus in this lymphocyte. So you can easily see and differentiate different leukocyte or white blood cell under the microscope. Therefore, you can count them. Okay? When you see under microscope, you can count how many lymphocytes, how many monocytes, how many neutrophils, how many basophils, how many eosinophils. Mostly, if it is normal blood coming from healthy person, mostly the one that you see will be neutrophils and lymphocytes because they are the most abundant one. It is very difficult to find basophil and eosinophil, except if you take a sample from someone that have allergy. Okay, the blood of someone that have allergy might have more eosinophils and basophils in their blood sample. Okay, this is some action or characteristic of white blood cell. They're able to move from blood vessels into outside from the blood vessel into the damaged area. So this process is called the diapedesis. Okay, diapedesis is the ability of white blood cell to squeeze or move between the cell of the blood vessel wall, and they can leave the blood vessel, go to the tissue, the damaged tissue. This is the ability of white blood cell, is called the diapedesis. And they're also able to attach to the cell, to other cell. It's called the cellular adhesion molecules. They produce protein that make them able to stick on the tissue or other cell. And they have the ability to eat the bacteria or maybe old cell. The ability is called the phycocytosis. Mostly the one that have this ability is the monocyte. Okay, so monocyte can eat bacteria. Okay? And the second one that have the ability to eat or phagocyte is the neutrophil. Okay, so from 5 different type of white blood cell, neutrophils and monocyte have the ability to eat or phagocyte other cell, including bacteria. Inflammatory response, so they can produce protein or substances that can cause inflammation. Mostly it is done by the eosinophil that causing this inflammatory responses. And positive chemotaxis, it means that they able to move. So taxis mean move based on the chemical. So they can sense chemicals difference in, for example, damaged tissue. So based on this information, then they can move or go to that specific area. Okay? So they can sense the chemical in order to move. Okay, so attract to chemical. This is showing us the diapedesis. So this is the blood vessels. The white blood cell able to squeeze through the epithelial tissue, endothelium of the blood vessel wall, and move, go to maybe damaged tissue. Okay, so this is diapedesis. This is chemotaxis, the movements of white blood cell from the blood vessels into the damaged area over here. So in the damaged area, like for example, if we have a splinter or something that puncture our skin, there will be a lot of blood vessel go to this area. Because what? Because this white blood cell will try to kill bacteria that maybe enter because of this skin damage. Okay. Now the counts, the normal count for white blood cells, normally for normal people, healthy people, is around 3,500 to 10,500. So this is the normal value for white blood cell. Remember, for red blood cell is about 5 million. Okay, so it's really big difference. Leukocyte. Okay, so if it is too much, if we have more than 10,000, for example, then the condition is called the leukocytosis. So leukocytosis means too much white blood cell in our body, and it is not good because this white blood cell can kill our own cell if it is too much. If it is too few of white blood cell in our blood, the condition is called the leukopenia. So penia means lower. Okay, so leukopenia is lower white blood cell, lower leukocyte. Okay. We can also perform what we call the differential white blood cell count, already mentioned to you. Okay, this is based on, for example, the percentage of each white blood cell. Neutrophil, it has to be 54 to 70%. If it is higher than that, maybe 80%, this is an indication of bacterial infection. Okay, so I already mentioned about this percentage of each type of leukocyte or white blood cell in our blood. So increase in number or percentage can be indication of specific type of disease. Okay, so lymphocyte, if it is too much, then it might be possible cause of leukemia, whooping cough, mononucleosis. This is a viral infection. If it is too much eosinophil, maybe infection of the parasite like tapeworm. Okay, maybe allergic reaction. If it is too much monocyte, then maybe indication of typhoid fever, malaria, TB. If it is too much neutrophil, it's indication of bacterial infection. If it is too few of lymphocyte, especially T helper or T cell, it is AIDS, okay, caused by the AIDS. Leukemia is a type of cancer, white blood cell cancer. Okay, this is mostly caused by too many young leukocytes in our blood. Okay, so the immature leukocyte or white blood cells in our blood, if it is too much, can cause disease called the leukemia. Maybe acute, maybe chronic. Okay, there are two types of leukemia: lymphoid leukemia and myeloid leukemia. Okay, the symptom of shows excess number of white blood cells, so too much white blood cell, fatigue, headache, nose bleeding, fever, respiratory infection, bone pains, bruisings, and bleeding. There's some treatment like chemotherapy, maybe bone marrow or stem cell transplantations. So this is leukemia. Now the last one, so this is the last type of cell or form elements in the blood, is called the blood platelets or thrombocyte. And the main function of thrombocyte is to protect against loss of blood. They are also produced in red bone marrow. Okay, the production is come from the hemocytoblast, megakaryocyte, and then finally thrombocyte, fragments of cell. They do not have nucleus because they are very, very small fragment of cell. The number is around 150,000 to 400,000. So this is the second one after red blood cell. Okay. If it is too much platelets, the condition is called the thrombocytosis. If the platelet is very few in the blood, it's called the thrombocytopenia. So penia means low. And usually people that have this condition, they're gonna be bleeding easily or happily. So they will not stop their bleedings easily. So the blood will just go from their body. So this is thrombocytopenia. So the blood will not clot, okay? They're bleeding easily. Okay, so this, again, the function of this platelet is for stop bleeding. It's called the hemostasis. They release special proteins or hormone, is called the serotonin, that will cause the muscles in the wall of broken blood to be contracted. Okay, so spasm. Okay, so the serotonin will causing the muscle to be spasmed, okay, to be contracted. Okay, now the summary of the component of the foam element or cellular components of the blood. The most abundant one, of course, red blood cell. Okay. Shape is biconcave, okay, thinner in the middle, thicker on the outside. It looks like a lifesaver peppermint. You know, you can use for make your mouth breathing fresher. The number of counts for male, around 5 million. Okay, 5 million to 6 million. For female, around 4 million to 5 million. The main function is to transport oxygen. This is the main function of red blood cell. The next one is white blood cell or leukocyte. There are several types. If it is based on the granule, it's going to be granulocyte, neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. The one that do not have granules or agranulocyte, monocyte, and lymphocyte. Okay. The neutrophil, this is the most abundant one, so 50 to 70%, 54-70%. The main function is for bacterial infection, so fight against bacteria. This is also eat bacteria, so phycocyte. Eosinophil, about 1 to 4%, and it is red in color, so the granule is red, and kill parasite and also allergic reaction. Basophils, blue, okay, so blue granule. It is the least abundant one, less than 1% in our blood. Release heparin and histamine for allergic reaction and inflammation. Agranulocyte do not have granules. The monocytes, this is the biggest or the largest, okay, cell, white blood cell in our body. This has a nucleus, look like a kidney shape, 3 to 9%. And this is also have the ability to eat bacteria, the phagocyte, just like the neutrophil. So neutrophil and monocyte are the phagocytes in our blood. Lymphocytes, okay, this is the smallest, white blood cell in size, 25 to 33%. This is the one that fight against virus and also produce immunity. So our immunity produced by this lymphocyte. It has two types, B cells and T cells. And the last one, okay, the last component of blood cell is called platelets or thrombocyte. This is just fragment of cell, about 150,000 to 400,000 per microliter in our blood. And this is the one that helps control blood loss from broken vessels. So it's control or protect us against bleeding too much. So it will clot the bleeding. That's all I think for part number 2. Okay, on the part number 3, we will talk about the blood plasma. So after the blood components in this part, we will talk about blood plasma in part 3. I'll see you on the next lesson. Goodbye.